Welcome to Life by Design, your favorite show where we help you to create the blueprint for the life you've always wanted for yourself, your family, and those of us with even bigger horizons. This is also about our communities and about our nation, Sierra Leone. This is April, the month where, as a nation, we're supposed to be celebrating our 59th independence anniversary. And today, we want to now bring you part 2 of looking back to look forward. Where are we coming from as a nation? Professor Joe AD Alie. Welcome back. Special series for the month of April. My guest for this series is Professor Joe AD Alie, Professor of History and also the Dean of Postgraduate Studies, University of Sierra Leone. Prof, we're trying to zero down. There's a thesis I've heard about one of the core reasons as to why we may claim to love this nation. All of us will claim to love this nation, but we can't translate that into protecting this nation in the way we behave, because at the bottom of life, there's been always an economic factor. That is scarce resources, that humans have to contend for. If we have 5 people going for one job, or that could benefit from a property, a land, whatever it is, by ourselves, we're 5 people and only one person can get it, it creates competition instantly. And so nation comes all the way in 5th place. It's myself leading the fight, then my family, then do I have build ties, family ties, ethnic ties, political ties. And so that's why the nation gets left behind. Even though we love the land, but our own personal needs, they need to defend us. Is what is creating this confusion. Would that be a reasonable assumption to make?
I think it is, but competition in itself is not a bad thing. I mean, people compete for everything. Resources are never adequate, not even in the so-called industrialized wars. As we now see, for instance, they're having difficulty getting the required things to be able to cope with the challenges of coronavirus.
But is it plausible? First of all, is this a plausible position to take?
It's a plausible
that
argument.
This is what could drive this. This is what could be driving this.
It's a plausible argument. Even all this thing about ethnicity, regionalism, it's about resources.
It's about resources.
It's about
and
resources.
It's about people wanting to compete.
And access to those resources. And equitable distribution of those resources. So people form these alliances.
To be able to increase their chance to compete.
Yes, to increase their chances of
winning and accessing.
For these resources. And in such situations, the overall interest, the overall good, that's the overall interest of the nation becomes secondary.
It's a major point. Do we get what Doc is saying? Yes. It's a very important point. And so what we've been trying to do, it says, if we, and somebody says, Doc, let me throw this at you again.
Yes.
It's not SLPP. It's not APC.
No.
That even if you go back to 1947, 1951, this is the story we want to roll back now. And if you change the names of the political parties, don't call it SLPP. Don't call it APC. If you had called one political party National People's Party, and you had called the other one People's Conservative Party, 1947, 1961, when APC was formed, we could have come back in 2020 and we would have had the same problems. Because it's not the names of the political party. Is it a fair assumption to make also?
Yeah, it is, because another thing we have to realize when you talk about political parties, in Africa generally, Sierra Leone notwithstanding, political parties are not generally formed along ideological lines. There's this strong ideology that we hold on. I mean, if you take any of the parties that have ruled Sierra Leone, they will all tell you, we want to develop this country.
But it will be the same. If you compare their manifesto, it's similar.
Yes.
It will be similar. So it's not ideological.
It's really, in my view,
it's not ideological.
And I stand to be corrected.
And so at the bottom of it all,
ideology is not as important as other considerations.
And which goes back down to what's our self-interest? Who are the other people that we can relate to be able to fight for this? Now, can we go back to our history and say, how has this dogged our growth as a nation? How far back do you want to go? How far back do you want to go?
As far back as the 40s. Because now that you're talking about political parties, 40s, specifically 1947.
You said a new constitution was formed.
When Hubert Stevenson, the then governor
And it was a white man?
Of course, it's a British government.
Came up with a constitution?
Yes.
And that constitution was meant to do what?
Was meant for the first time to have more say in the affairs of this country in the hands of Sierra Leoneans. Hitherto, the governance of this country was largely in the hands of the British colonial fellows. But after the Second World War, there was a rethink that
they need to pass on more power.
This was not the time for independence, and you had to prepare Africans for independence. So that constitution basically provided for more Sierra Leonean participation in the governance of this country in the Legislative Council. But even more importantly is that it made provision for more protectorate Sierra Leoneans to be represented.
So let's go over this again. So Sierra Leone was divided into two parts.
Well, one of the unfortunate things that happened in this country, I didn't want to go that, but was the division of this country into a colony and a protectorate. This was not peculiar to Sierra Leone. It happened in the Gold Coast, in Nigeria, and the Gambia. But ours was unique in the sense.
And the colony was Freetown.
Yes. And its environs.
And Freetown is environs.
Yes.
And the protector is a subcontinent.
Yes.
Now, so what did this constitution do? You said the constitution gave more power to a majority.
A little bit of history here is that the colonies was largely inhabited by the Creole ethnic group, who had a very long association with the British. And so they thought, all things being equal, that they would be the heirs of the new Sierra Leone. The British will hand power over to them. But this new constitution, this proposed constitution, seemed to dash their hopes, because if we were going to work on the principle of proportionality, more representatives will come from the protectorate. And by extension, protectorate people will lead the country to independence.
So what's the party? What did they form?
This constitutional proposal was discussed at the Legislative Council for over 3 years. And it was so protracted that some die-hard colony politicians decided to form a political party.
Was it colony politicians or protectorate politicians?
Colony politicians.
They formed a political party. What did they call it?
Decided to form a political party called the National Council of the Colony of Sierra Leone.
National Council of the Colony.
Of the colony.
So it's a colony politicians.
It's a colony affair.
What that triggered? What did that trigger?
Well, they wanted to block the implementation of the constitution because they realized
it would pass on power to the protectorate. And what happened after that?
After that, about a year later, the protectorate politicians also galvanized
and formed the political
thanks
party.
To the exertions of some progressive colony politicians like Reverend E.N. Jones, called Lamina Sanko, came together to form a new party, the Sierra Leone People's Party, in 1951.
And you said and he said it included both people from the colony.
Oh, there are people from the colony, yes.
Protectorate to come together, and they call it Sierra Leone People's Party.
The Sierra Leone People's Party.
What time was that?
This was on the 27th of April, 1951.
1951.
Yes.
That's when the SLPP was formed.
Yes.
And so we rolled history forward. In 1961, you said, when did the APC form? What
October 1960, thereabout.
That's when, what triggered the formation of the APC?
Again, this has something to do, this is our history, we can't shy away from it. It was formed because certain people who had been part of the SLPP, primarily Shaka Stevens, felt dissatisfied with some of the arrangements made. And so he and some other people decided to form a new party. And again, this is important for people to know. This party, initially, some leaders wanted to call it the Northern People's Party.
And then, so who said?
But Shaka Stevens said no.
It shouldn't be Northern.
And so it became a bit more inclusive.
And because All People Congress. So that's how the parties go in.
Yes.
That's how they were born. And so let's just hold
this regionalism in
goes way back.
In national politics
goes
back to the 40s.
The 1940s. Yes. And this is just making a point. We want your feedback, active feedback on this, because these are the roots. These are the roots of the divisions. It's always, if you peel the onion, it always go back down to something, some base, interests that we have, and we coalesce together around groups. Yeah. And that's why the land that we love, we can never have that love showing
secondary.
Because it becomes secondary. So we want to hear your feedback. Send us your messages. Our channels are all on the screen. We want you to be part of this discussion.